And thank you for coming to our music and message breakfast on this rainy day. I really appreciate it. Again, for those who don't know me, I am Melanie Eyre. I'm the spiritual leader here at One World. Yay. One World is an interspiritual, interfaith community where we celebrate the many paths to the divine and we support each other on our own spiritual journey. While I talk, you are free to get up and go get some more food, because message and music and food, there's plenty more up there, so please go ahead. So today what I'd like to do while you eat is share some thoughts that I have put together on our journey from uncertainty to knowing, from anxiety to peace, and yes, it all does fit in with our title of What Me. So let's just embark on this journey together. So we here at One World are a community where we learn and practice the spiritual traditions that are at the heart of the world's different faith traditions. We call ourselves interspiritual, and this is a word I'm going to talk about a little later, but for me right now, let me just say that we believe here that there are many paths to the divine and that all contain truth. And that is what we teach, and that is what we practice. Our beliefs are listed in your bulletin, and let me just go through them, because we don't really talk about them all that much, but I'd like to talk about them today. The first is we believe in one divine spirit manifest in all creation. And what does that mean is we don't fixate on a particular name, because we know that all names are an attempt to name the unnameable. What we're looking for is that experience, that direct experience of the divine by whatever name you wish to call it. We believe that each of us is a beloved, unique, and conscious expression of that divine spirit. We believe that the divine is omnipresent, being fully in all places at all times. That is an amazing thought. Remember what Charles Fillmore said? Spirit is a concentric circle in which the center is everywhere and the circumference is nowhere. I remember when I was studying math, I was a horrible math student, but they kept saying you can't comprehend the notion of infinity. Do you remember that? Because our minds just cannot do it. That is the notion of spirit. It's just the center is everywhere and the circumference is nowhere. Wherever we are at the center, and the circumference just spins and goes in every direction around us. That is a thought with huge ramifications. Next, we honor the world's diverse faith traditions, and we take wisdom from each, believing that there are many paths to the divine, and each contains truth. That is what we do here. We are an interspiritual, interfaith community, and we draw from each, and I'm going to talk about that later as well. We believe that we grow in our connection with divine spirit and each other through sacred service, joyful community, and a contemplative practice such as meditation or prayer. So that's what we do. We believe in community, in service, and in an individual contemplative practice, however that works for you. We believe that as co-creators with divine spirit, our thoughts, beliefs, and actions shape our reality and our experiences. So those are our beliefs. From those points of agreement, if you will, and beyond that, we each craft our own individual journeys, because what we know is that the spiritual journey is an inside job. Spiritual awakening is about the journey. One of my favorite authors, Rabbi Rami Shapiro, says, there are no fixed points on the spiritual path. You don't get to arrive. You just keep going in a certain direction. It's not like we get there and plant a flag. I always love it on airplanes, you know, and everybody lands, everybody leaps up and says, I'm here, I'm here. There's no emojis for awakening. We don't get to find one and hit send. We just keep going. There's no arrival. It's the journey that we take individually, and here we also share it together. We realize that spiritual deepening is not a question of how many verses you can memorize, how many Sundays you are here, even though I wish I could make it so, but it's not. It's not a question of how often you attend a service. It's not a question even of what you say you believe. It's a question of how you change. I mean, that's really what it is. It's a question of how you change, how you transform, how you stop living your life from the outside in, just reacting to all the things that get flung at us every day, and from the inside out. Does that make sense? And you know, as that's happening to you, as you change, that is the purpose, that is the goal, if I can use that phrase, of our spiritual journey. So there are those here who may call themselves nuns. A lot of us grew up in other faith traditions, and you know, when the survey comes by every 10 years, we may say unaffiliated. We may say none when asked about our religious or spiritual affiliation. If we do that, we are joining with one of the fastest growing groups there is. In the 2015 Pew Religious Landscape Survey, it was reported that 22.8% of respondents identified themselves as religiously unaffiliated, up from 16% in 2007. That is a big jump, and that's across all age cohorts. If you look at millennials, who I think is defined as born 1984 and after, am I right on that? Anyway, it is a much larger percentage of that group who identify themselves as religiously unaffiliated. Nearly 1 in 5 Americans say they were raised as Christians or members of another faith community, but now they have no religious affiliation. 1 in 5. That is huge. And that is, I mean, that landscape is just changing the way we, obviously the way we worship, the way we join together in community, and the way we interact as a society. Of that 22.8% who said they were religiously unaffiliated, I was interested to see that 7% identify as atheist or agnostic, which is not a large number. And the other 15.8% said that they were nothing in particular. So, really, hello? So what does that mean? That means that you're unaffiliated but interested, right? That means that you're open to the possibilities. You just haven't found a place that works for you. You are interested. You are spiritual but not religious. So that probably accounts for many of us in this room, right? Who just are on our own individual journey, and we haven't found a particular faith tradition that has all the answers for us. So our intention here at One World, and the reason we created ourselves, is to be a community of learning and of practice in which each one of us can consciously walk his or her own path. Sharing with each other our joys, our aha moments, right? Our epiphanies, our understandings, our growth, and also our wrong turns, our disappointments, and our challenges. You know, it's funny because a lot of times when people will leave a specific or a traditional house of worship, they will say, I just miss my community. And that's the reason a lot go back. It's not because they buy all the tenets of the faith, but they just miss their peeps. They just want to be in community. What we try to do here is create a community of learning and practice and growth where we each can support each other, but we each take our own individual path. Why? Because it's always an inside job. Your spiritual journey is your journey. I can't walk it for you. I can walk it with you. We can walk it alongside each other, sharing what we learn and what we come to understand, but we can't do it for each other. We do it alone, but gathering in community helps us on that journey. We are spiritually independent, but we celebrate that value of community. Here we give each other permission to be vulnerable, right? To make mistakes, to be sad, to say, I don't want to talk to you, I just want to sit here, or to be crazy, not so happy. We just give ourselves permission to be all those things. I like to say that here, for a couple hours a week, we get to behave as we should all the time, out there. No, seriously, it's like a practice ground for being out there as we should always be. We just get to be here and practice. So that's our intention. And what is our goal? Our goal is to have each of us live a life of meaning, joy, and purpose. It's not just to continue kind of gazing in the mirror and just evaluating how much we grow. It's to get out there and make a difference. It's to show up differently. It's to live a life of meaning, of service, and of purpose. As Lama Surya Das said in his book, which I think has the best title of all, Make Me One with Everything. Yes, there is a joke there. He said, if we can't find enlightenment, freedom, autonomy, divinity, and bliss amid every nitty-gritty detail of life, then all the rituals, sacraments, prayers, chants, yogas, asanas, gurus, and pilgrimages in the world are useless. you find that to be true? If it doesn't make a difference, why do it? It's got to make a difference to you, how you show up in the world. Our spiritual journey matters. It's not just a question of feeling better. It's a question of showing up differently. It matters. So back to our title for today, What Me? This is a big question, and it has many implications. It's a huge question. It may be the most profound question we ask ourselves. We ask it every day with all the choices that are coming toward us. Do we get another job? Do we go back to school? Do I acknowledge that homeless person asking me for money, or do I put my head down and cross the street? Life is always coming at us with that question. What me? Why me? Same question. Life puts us on the spot, and we have to answer. We have to figure out how we are going to respond and why it is us that is on the spot. The question comes up, and we answer it every day in 100 ways and times. So what does the question represent? To me, it represents all the excuses, the barriers, and the reasons that we throw up in front of ourselves to stop us from experiencing our God self, our divine self. It's a small question. It's funny because it's a big question and it's a small question. When you ask it, what you're really saying is, I'm not sure I can do that. Surely there's someone else better equipped for that, better trained, better educated, better looking, better situated. Why me? It's got to be somebody else. And we don't even focus on the attributes or capacities of that other person. We frankly don't care. What we're looking at is our own incapacity and our own presumed inability to pick up the phone and answer that call because we're not sure we can do it. We say, what, me? No, we are uncertain. Uncertainty ahead, as it says on your bulletin. We think, surely to God, someone else can do this better. How many in this room have had those moments? Hello? Show of hands, put down your fork. Yes, we've all had those moments. We all have them still. We have them daily. Now, if you're like me, the question can, and I assume all of you are like me, okay. That question can freeze you into immobility, right? You just kind of go, God, why me? It's just like a deer in the headlights. Why me? So what do? We look for an answer to the question. But what is it that Einstein said? He said, we can't solve problems by using the same kind of thinking we used when we created them. So we can't answer that question. We can't find a solution to that question at the same level on which we ask it. The question is born of doubt, of separation, of fear, of focusing on the small I, right? We know that there's a small I, my ego self, my attributes, my thinking, my mind thinking that what I know about myself is all of myself. And then there's a larger I, which is the essence of me. The essence of me that I share with all of you, which is at the center. When we ask the question, what me? All we do is focus on the small I, and we lose sight of that larger universal essence that is our divine self, at the core of our being. We just lose touch. Okay, so what do we have to do to answer that question? We have to shift our paradigm. We have to be able to take a different view of it, a different view of the question, a different view of us. We have to give ourselves a more spacious opportunity to take a truthful and an open and a loving, curious look at who we are, at who the divine essence is at our very core. What is our place here? What is ours to do? Who are we? Who am I? And who are you? We just have to give ourselves a different look at that question without jumping to, I'm not enough, I'm too small, I can't do it. Our spiritual practices help us shift the way we look at that question. For me, that is the answer I find. My spiritual practices help me shift the way I look at that question. And the more I do them, it's almost like the more irrelevant the question becomes. Because I don't immediately default to that fear, to that separation, to that doubt. That is the goal of what we do when we practice. The goal of it is to engage daily practices that change us, to show up differently. We practice to maintain our connection with our center, that place of knowing and stillness and peace, where we just know that we are enough. No matter how we show up, we know that we are enough no matter how we feel that day. That is our center of divinity, our center of peace. So that is what we believe. And we affirm it all the time at One World. I talk about it a lot. Okay, so what do we do with that knowing? We cognitively know it, but how do we behave? I behave as if I'm the only exception to that cosmic rule. That everybody else is divine. Everybody else is gifted and divine and wonderful except for me. I'm the only one through whom God is not flowing and pulsing and being. It's like, really? Do you find yourself doing that in your life? You're like, well, everybody else may be divine, but man, I got my problems. No, you cannot be the only exception. That's not the way it works. If you're going to believe it for everybody else, you got to believe it for you. And so what does that mean? That means you have to find a way to incorporate it into your heart, into your very essence of being, and give yourself the same loving regard that you give to everybody else as a face of the divine. That is our biggest challenge. It's easy to be nice to other people. To be nice to ourselves, that is a big step. Right? But there's no exceptions to the rule. Divinity is coursing and pulsing and being all of us. We are all expressions of the divine, no matter how we feel about ourselves that day. So in my experience, and again, that's all I can talk about is my own experience, it's my practices and my reading and my study and my daily practices that integrate what I cognitively believe with what I am increasingly able to live as my truth. Because you have to move it from here to here. You can't read or talk or think your way into it. We can say we believe it, but until we start actually living it and knowing it, it doesn't really change us. We still have those default fears and limitations and stops that we put in our way. So I work at this on a daily basis, sometimes better than others. You know, I did a talk a while back, I said 20 minutes a day, and I got up here and I was well dressed and I had my glasses on and I said, you don't need to meditate 20 minutes a day. Well, guess what? Sometimes I don't. Okay, please turn the camera off. No, we're all human. We just do the best we can. We try to do it every day, and if we don't, we just get up and do it again. Guess what? It's a gift. We just get up and try it again because I know there's value in it. So I try to make it a daily practice. I read and I study what has been the wisdom and the truth of hundreds of people throughout the centuries that come down to me. This can be the scriptures of different faith traditions. It can be wisdom teachers and sages who wrote everywhere from thousands of years ago to last month. I get to pick what it is I want to look at that helps me find my own truth. And I'm sure that many of you do the same. Because it's not all about just sitting and thinking yourself. It's also about reading what other people have found, reading what other people have experienced. However, when I reach for those books, or nowadays I click for the Google or whatever the heck I'm doing, right? I'm reminded of one of my favorite passages in Emily Cady's Lessons in Truth. In Lesson 3, she cautioned against accepting as truth the experiences of others. And this is an important point. She wrote, my advice is, if you want to make rapid progress in growth towards spiritual understanding, stop reading many books. Takes a load off, doesn't it? Stop reading many books, okay. They only give someone's opinion about truth or a sort of history of the author's experience in seeking truth. What you want is revelation of truth in your own soul, and that will never come through the reading of many books. Okay, so let's unpack that a little bit. I don't think she meant don't pick up another book, because I'm guessing that would have included Lessons in Truth. And there go your royalties. No, I don't think that's what she meant. I think what she meant is don't stop there. Make sure you know that what you're reading is not the truth. How often do we stumble about that? We're not sure what our truth is, so we pick up a book by fill in the blank, and we think that's the truth. It's not. It's that person's experience of truth. Take it away one step further. It's that person's imperfect articulation of what he or she experienced as truth. That's it. That's all it is. And all we can do is take it and use it to try to find what is ours, what is our own truth. That is what their truth seemed like to them that day in the best way they could express it. And that's true for the scriptures, that's true for whatever book you pick up. That's what it is. Their description of the truth they found, it may resonate with you. It frequently resonates with me. And it may even help you to unpack your truth, but you cannot skip the interim steps. It's like eating food and digesting it. You know, we're eating waffles, we're eating eggs. It's not like they just slap themselves onto our body. There's a process, right? Okay, that was an imperfect analogy, but go with me. Wherein we just integrate it into ourselves. And it's the same thing. When we read someone else's truth, there needs to be a process whereby we integrate it to our use inside ourselves. So when I read the scriptures from any faith tradition, I don't read it to find the truth. Oh, thank God, there's the truth. I can now move on and, go do something else. No, I read it to find their description of the truth, and that's what I remember, or their experience of what was true. I see if it resonates with me. I see if I find it beautiful, if I find it inspirational, because I got it. Beauty opens you up in a way that nothing else does, doesn't it? When you read something that's beautiful, or you listen to beautiful music. I was driving along the other day, and I was listening to Handel's Messiah. Love it. I just felt so uplifted and changed just by listening to something that is just beautiful. The same is true with things we read. It changes us. It opens us up to the possibility that what is being said may make a difference to us. It speaks to us in ways that we can then use and integrate into our own practice and our own being. Transformation is a process. It's a spiritual process. It's not a cognitive one. As I was listening to the Messiah, I wasn't sitting there thinking, gosh, this is beautiful, I should feel uplifted. No, none of that. I just felt wonderful. And think of any piece of music you like, because music does that to us. It's a heart process. It's not a cognitive process. It is a heart process. Because they say your heart is where the human and the divine merge, right there. And that's where we change in our hearts. Spirituality is the direct, unmediated experience of the divine. So what do I mean? We all know direct. What do I mean when I say it's unmediated? It means that it's your own experience, coming to you fresh and direct without anybody else interpreting it for you, right? That's unmediated. It's just you and the divine. And that kind of indicates a separation, which I don't mean to imply. But nobody is saying this is truth. Nobody is saying this is how you should feel. Nobody is saying if you feel this way, it's truth. If you feel that way, it's not. It's your own direct experience. It brings you to a place of knowing, of just knowing that you are so much more than the sum of your attributes. Don't we sometimes fall into that trap, just thinking we're the sum of our education, our experience, our looks, our money, our whatever? No. Spirituality is a process that makes you know you are more than that. You are so much more than that. As Meister Eckhart said, the eye with which I see God is the same eye with which God sees me. I had to read that a couple times. The eye with which I see God is the same eye with which God sees me. What does that mean? It means there's nothing in the middle. The eye that experiences God is God experiencing me back. That's where we want to be. That's why we are all mystics. Who was it? It was Walter McNamara said, a mystic is not a special kind of person. Every person is a special kind of mystic. And it's true. We each have our own way to get to that eye, to experience God and at the same time have God experiencing us back. Okay, so do many have these mystical, personal, and direct experiences through their faith traditions? Yes, of course they do. I'm not dissing different faith traditions. They absolutely do. Many religious experiences, many religious houses lead us to those spiritual aha moments, but not all. Because what's the difference between religion and spirituality? Religion, well, as Wayne Teasdale wrote in The Mystic Heart, he writes, being religious connotes belonging to and practicing a religious tradition, right? Being spiritual suggests a personal commitment to a process of inner development that engages us in our totality. Spirituality is a way of life that affects and includes every moment of existence. Now that sounds like some heavy lifting, but it's wonderful. Because when you can maintain that connection every moment of existence, Oh my God, I haven't got there yet, but I can only just imagine. How joyful is that? That would be the difference between religion and spirituality. But many pursue that. Many pursue that aha, that epiphany moment, that connection through the lens of a specific faith tradition. Each faith tradition speaks of truth in its own imagery, and each practitioner is going to experience truth or articulate truth through the lens, through the filter of that faith tradition, because that's what they know. That's the language they know. For example, for Christians, they're going to talk about union with God, right? If you read the Christian mystics, that's what they talk about. They talk about divine, ecstatic union with God. For Buddhists, it may be awakening to that universal non-dual consciousness and a complete loss of self. For Hindus, it may be coming to know the Atman, or that ineffable soul that is the center of all of us. Okay, so, enter the gift of interspirituality, which I talked about at the beginning. Interspirituality is the willingness to experience the ultimate mystery through the language and the imagery of faith traditions different from your own. Why? Because they give us a different way to look at it. They give us a different way to experience it. It's like people, different faith traditions, remember the image of feeling the elephant? Somebody walks up and feels the nose. Oh, this faith tradition is long and thin. Feeling the ears, it's flat and large. And feeling the feet, well, it's got these bumps and things. All together they can come up with an image of the whole. But each one of them looks at it differently. The gift of interspirituality gives us the option to look at the different languages that every faith tradition has used to describe the same inarticulable truth. So, for example, the Christian mystics, they love their exposure to Eastern tradition. Thomas Merton, Father Keating, they love their exposure to Buddhism and Hinduism. Why? Because it gave them the language of non-duality, right? One of the reasons I left the Episcopal Church is I just could not understand the Trinity, because it seemed to be all broken up. I am now finding, as I progress on my journey, that I'm starting to understand it. So I have developed a real interest in the Trinity because I know there's more to it than I knew. But what the Eastern mystical practices gave Christian practitioners is an understanding of non-duality. The language of walking into that universal consciousness that is God, that is you. And they just didn't have that language before. So what a gift coming from that tradition. Conversely, Wayne Teasdale tells us that many Hindus maintain a Catholic devotional practice dedicated to the Sacred Heart of Jesus. Why? Because it relates to an image that is prevalent in the Hindu spiritual tradition of the guha, or heart. So they can relate to that, and it gives them a different way to look at it. So what are they doing? They're expressing a willingness to look somewhere else and take from that tradition the tools that speak to them. The Dalai Lama told his monks to study Christian theology and mysticism. Tibetan monks go out and study Christian theology and mysticism. Why? Because it opened them up to a different language. It opened them up to a different experience of the divine mystery. We each get to read these different scriptures and get our truth from them, whatever it is they say. Let me give you an example. This is one of my favorite examples. It's from the Christian, actually from the Hebrew scriptures. Let me find my favorite example. Okay. In Exodus, we read that Moses is out tending the flocks. This is the story everyone knows. Tending the flocks of his father-in-law, right? And what does he see? He sees a bush that is burning but is not consumed, right? This is odd. We don't usually see this. So he gets a little closer. And he hears a voice, Moses, Moses, coming out of the bush. Okay, just as an aside, why can't we all have that? We're all looking for truth. It's like, I'm sitting there thinking, where is truth, where is truth? These people have flames following them in the desert, burning bushes. Why are they so lucky? Okay, that was just an aside. Okay, Moses, Moses. And he answers, yes, here I am. And out of the bush comes, do not come any closer. Take off your sandals, because you are standing on holy ground. I am the God of your ancestors, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He then tells Moses that he's going to lead his people out of Egypt and into the promised land. Okay, so what is important to me about that story? Take off your sandals because you are standing on holy ground. Okay, now, the truth of that passage, as it has been interpreted by many, is that he's standing in front of God. And so he needs to take off his sandals, right? That's not the way I read it. Because I get to get from it what matters to me. The way I read it is the reason it is holy is because Moses is standing there. And Moses is holy. Moses is divine in his divine expression of God. And by taking off his sandals, he acknowledges that. I get to decide that because that is what resonates with me. Is it going to be taught in all the theology books? Probably not. But that's the truth that I get from it. And it makes a difference to me. It makes me feel a deeper connection with my own divine truth. It makes me feel that I too am holy just where I stand. So that's one example of how we can take scriptures that we may, or books that we may personally have said, well, that's not really my theology, I'm not buying it, and get the gift from it that makes a difference to you. Through the gift of interspiritual learning and practice, what do? We widen our circle of knowledge. We widen our experience to include the experiences of sages and teachers who have gone before and have had those aha moments. Their aha moment may not be mine, but it may lead me to mine. And so if I have a message today, this might be it, is don't reject these gifts. This is our heritage, all of us, and it is so accessible to us right now. There is beauty, there is inspiration, there is truth, and we do ourselves a disservice by not opening ourselves up to it. Hundreds of books over the centuries, pages and pages, sharing the experience of truth of so many seekers and why, to help you find your own. That's it. Just to help you find your own and use it to change yourself and transform your world. So as we attempt to open up our view of ourselves and our connection to all of life, it helps us to take a look at the many different ways that seekers through the centuries have found to celebrate the single truth that is at the center of all the world's faith traditions, and it is this, is that everything is a manifestation of the one. Think about that. Everything is a manifestation of the one. You, me, that, everything. Huge ramifications for us. And when we think that, it makes a difference in how we behave. It makes a difference in how we ask the question, why me? Because we now realize that there is no other of which we need to be afraid. There is no threat out there because we are all manifestations of the one. There is no separation. I don't need to be jealous of your success because it's the same as my success. I don't need to fear what's coming because I know I can do it because I'm a manifestation of the one, as is that thing I am walking into. It completely changed our view of that question. In the Gospel of Thomas, Jesus says, I am the light above everything. I am everything. Everything came forth from me, and everything reached me. Split wood, I am there. Lift up a rock, you will find me there. Everywhere. Just everywhere. What a thing to celebrate. Rabbi Aaron Horowitz writes, God's only desire is to reveal unity through diversity. That is to reveal that all of reality is unique in all its levels and in all of its details, and nevertheless united in a fundamental oneness. How cool is that? Is anybody glad they heard that stuff today? Doesn't that just lift you up? There's more of it out there. All we need to do is just celebrate it and take it in and help it change us. In the Quran, it is written that God is as close to you as the vein in your neck. So what does that mean? It means that Allah is part of you. Because the vein in your neck is not close to you, it's you. Right? The faith traditions say the same thing. Everything is a manifestation of the one. Our spiritual journey is our walk to incorporate that truth into our hearts, into our lives, into our very being. The knowledge that we are not separate and there is no other. The question just fades into the background. As Rami Shapiro writes, when we come to that truth, we move, he writes, from the conditioned to the unconditioned, from fear to love, from a constricted heart to an open heart, from a closed mind and clenched fist to an open mind and an open hand. What a beautiful image. So the story goes that after nearly half a century of teaching, the Buddha lay dying, surrounded by his distraught disciples, who were just so upset because the Buddha was dying. And they pleaded, "Blessed One, who will be our teacher now? Who will guide us? How will we achieve enlightenment without your help?" And what did he say? He said, "Be your own light. Be your own light." Because he knew that each of them was his own light. The interspiritual journey is the journey of becoming your own light, informed by all the truth and all the beauty and all the inspiration we can find on the way. So what I usually do in these talks is sometimes I will give you a checklist of practical pointers to take away. I don't have any checklist today. My prayer for you today is only that you will access the treasures that are in front of you, that you will just walk into this gift of interspiritual connection and growth and development and truth, because it's all out there. Pick up a book, read it, read a passage, read for 10 minutes, and then sit and write just what it means to you, what that truth means to you. Not what that truth is that person says, what it means to you. Because there are so many gifts out there. So I'm going to close with one of my favorite passages from the Gospel of Eve. And it says, "I am you and you are I. And in whatever place you are, I am there. And I am sown in everything. And in whatever place you wish, you may gather me. But when you gather me, you gather yourself." So enjoy. And thank you for coming.